Good day, everybody. My name is Redeyes, and if you're asking, hell is us? What's this then? Then I'm here to answer that question. So Hell is Us is the latest game by developer Rogue Factor, who brought you previous games such as Mordheim, City of the Damned, and Necromunda Underhive Wars, which were tactics games based in the Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k universes, respectively. Now, this game is quite a departure from their previous works, as this one is a third-person action-adventure with melee combat, puzzle-solving, and sort of a mysterious, figure-it-out kind of story. It's pretty good. I mean, I have to say, just get it out there nice and quick. Like, I've been having a pretty good time with this one. But before we dive into any of the specifics of the game itself, I just want to say, for the sake of transparency and the fact that this is a little bit of a special what's this then for me, is the fact that this is a build of the game that I have been given before release. Now, I wouldn't strictly call it a review copy because that's not really why I got it. Just to explain a little bit, previously there was a demo some time ago. I decided to stream it, had facecam on, and at the end of the demo there was a bit of a cliffhanger reveal of the next area you'd be going into, and it was quite, it was an impressive sort of scene you're looking at, and that's when the game goes, thanks for playing, and it elicits a reaction. Same with me, I was like, wow, can't believe they cut it there. That was, wow, we really want to see what's next. And essentially they must have randomly stumbled across my stream. They asked me if they could use my reaction in a little compilation video that we're putting on their YouTube channel. A bunch of different streamers and stuff on there. I said yes, because why the hell not? And they said, as thanks for doing that, they may be able to get a code for everyone who was featured in the video. And essentially what those were kind of review codes that were given out. Cut to, I believe, Friday there, and that's when I got the code, so I have been playing it a little bit. So I just wanted to point that out because obviously this will kind of be the first time that I've been given early access to a game to do this sort of video on it. And also it's just kind of a big deal for whenever you're doing these sorts of videos, for the first time you realize like, oh, I didn't have to pay for this. This is now, can my sort of integrity as someone who criticizes games hold up in that environment? I like to believe it has, because I do have my criticisms of this game. Like I said though earlier, I have been having a good time with it, but we'll get more into that as we get into the actual game itself here. First, I want to hop into the settings menu, because we're on PC, we care about settings menus a lot more than most people do. But let's have a look at the gameplay. So, auto-target switch. This game has a lock-on system, very similar to the current wave of Souls-likes, as you might imagine. And this is just auto-switch whenever you kill an enemy. It's pretty nice. Datapad opening animation. Okay, so this is sort of like your inventory and like your sort of general everything, do your loadout, inspect your inventory, all this sort of stuff. Keep track of quests or missions, goals you have to do. Whenever you hit the button to take this out, it plays about a 3-second long animation. 3 to 4 second, maybe? About 3 seconds. This isn't too bad, but once you start opening this datapad quite often, then you will notice that is taking up quite a bit of time. So you may want to turn this to short, as I have done, and it will take it out in like a second, less than a second. So I would probably recommend this one, but leave it on default, maybe see what the full animation's like, because it's a nice little animation. Someone worked hard on that, and I like that it's there, but I also like the ability to cut it short whenever I've seen it enough times. So, appreciate that. UI, HUD visibility. You can have it dynamic, hidden, or shown. I always like dynamic, because I like it when the HUD goes away when I don't need it, but I love it when it's there when I need it, Love dynamic. Enemy tier indicator. This kind of shows you, just basically how dangerous the enemy is. I have only recently gotten to the point in the game when this has become even a thing, so nice that they have that, but interesting that you can turn it off, because it might be good to know that an enemy is stronger, but maybe you just like to go into it not knowing, sometimes some enemies just hit harder than most. Enemy damage numbers, also nice to be able to turn off. This is something I normally do turn off in most games, unless, like, because I normally don't like damage numbers unless contextually it kind of makes sense. Like, say I was playing Cyberpunk, I can kind of understand why there might be damage numbers in that, because everyone's got, like, robot eyes, and they can see, you know, I don't know, maybe what damage they're doing or something, I don't know. But it's nice to be able to turn this off. I have actually kept it on shown. Haven't found it too distracting, or, you know, it's not taking me out of the experience or anything, seeing the numbers fly out or anything. Controller vibration mode, vibration intensity, usual stuff there, so you can do like ambient vibrations, or you can just do gameplay related ones. I've kept it on full, quite like it, seems pretty good. Into the sound, there's pretty much everything you would ever need in here. Dynamic range, full or late night, audio output, stereo headphones, or home theater. Interesting one here is controller speaker volume. I have not heard anything come out of the controller speaker at all the whole time I've been playing. I don't know, maybe I had that disabled a long time ago. I'm not really too sure, but I haven't had any audio that hasn't been playing in-game and has maybe been trying to come out of the controller or anything like that, so I've just sort of left all as is. Now, video settings, quite a lot in here, very nice stuff. So you got borderless, you got windowed. There is no full screen, because borderless full screen is kind of taking over from traditional full screen when it comes to video games these days. Windows 11, borderless full screen is pretty much just as good in terms of like latency and performance, so there's really no reason to have full screen, really. There might be some DX or Vulkan stuff going on there as well, but certainly in my case, borderless just seems better than full screen in every way, so I'm not really too sad to see it gone. I don't know if there's a reason that it would need to be there, if there's any niche cases. Otherwise, you can set your resolution, goes all the way up to 4K, 16:9, that's what I play at. Quality presets, you can do your usual business, and you've got all your settings here. I turn anti-aliasing down because, like I said, I'm playing on 4K, and you really don't need anti-aliasing when you're playing at 4K, to be honest. So I have everything on very high. I have tried it with everything on ultra, and I lose about 10 frames, and I don't really notice any visual difference. So I have put everything down to very high, except for view distance, kept that on ultra, because I don't want to see pop-in if I don't have to see it. And there is some pop-in in this game. Some. Very, very slight. Usually when you're loading back into an area and you see all the textures load in, I don't really notice pop-in when it comes to, like, things in the distance as I'm moving around, but it could be there. Maybe it's just very, very slight, but I haven't really noticed it. It certainly hasn't distracted me if it has been there. And then you got your VSync, and you got your low latency, FPS limit, brightness. Interestingly, you can't set a specific number. You can only go to 30, 60, or limited or smooth frame rate, where it attempts to use hardware VSync, or avoid spikes before hardware VSync. Sorry. It would be nice to see a numbered FPS limit. Those are usually the best ones. I understand that sort of thing is usually very, like, engine-based, so if you haven't coded that in, then it's just not something you can do. But I'm not 100% sure on that. But unlimited, and then I lock my own frame rate using external methods, so that's usually what I would recommend, especially if you're using G-Sync, and then you can turn off V-Sync and still get all the latency goodness, and yeah, just get the best of both worlds. You got HDR. I don't really use HDR because it's kind of a mess on Windows. And then you got all your upscalers. I have been playing with DLSS on at quality. Game looks sharp. Game looks crisp. No issues there. I generally don't use FrameGen unless I really, really have to. Like, a game is, like, I really need that extra bump, which, honestly, in this game, like, the frame rate I'm sort of hitting roughly around 70, high 60s to low 70s in the open world with a lot of busyness potentially going on, and then easily up into the 90s pretty consistently when you're like indoors. So I could turn on FrameGen. I would probably get a decent bump there and not really feel too much input lag, but if I don't have to use FrameGen, I won't, because I don't like the artifacting that generally comes with it, and I tend to notice it quite a lot. Cyberpunk had quite a bit of it, which I didn't like. Oh, apparently I saved something. No, all good. Language, you can change the text language to all sorts of different languages. Voice language, you can change it to French, because the development studio is French, so that makes sense. And you got subtitles, subtitle size, subtitle background, which is always nice. Controls, you can do input icons. You can change them to be automatic, so it'll just be based on what it detects you're inputting as. Or you can set it to mouse and keyboard, PlayStation or Xbox buttons. I really like this. I would like to see more games just add this in, because I use any game that I'm going to use the controller on, I would prefer to use the PlayStation controller, the DualSense, the PS5 one. I believe it's just a really, really comfortable controller, and I like it a lot. And this, just having the icons in there means that you don't necessarily have to make your game compatible with the PlayStation controller, because Steam can handle that and make it think it's an Xbox controller, but then you just put this in your game where it just changes the icons or the glyphs or whatever to be PlayStation, and then everybody wins. You know, you don't really have to put in that extra effort, but it's good to see that this is here. You know, it supports the PlayStation controller, and I could have it be Xbox buttons if I really wanted it to. Not sure why anyone would, but you could, and that options is nice. UI tab cycling input. This is when you're in your little tablet inventory thing. There's R1 and L1 to move across a certain category of tabs, and then there's L2 and R2 to move across another set of category. I hit the wrong button every single time. Changing this will not help me in any way, but it's nice to see that you can change that if you want. Does it in here too. You can see at the top, it's changing from L1 and R1 to L2 and R2. Vertical look, sensitivity, all this sort of stuff, and change inverted, usual stuff. Toggle to sprint. I would keep that on toggle, because you might be sprinting for quite a bit sometimes. Camera, you can do camera follow, where it'll always remain behind where the character is looking. I prefer to have full control over my camera and character respectively, so I'd have this off. Movement lag, rotation lag, just to give the camera a wee bit more weight, or you can have it be very snappy, nice to see. And then you've got fully rebindable controls for controller, which is very nice to see, not something you see very often. A lot of the time, I think they don't really like controller buttons being remapped. I'm not 100% sure on why that is, but we're starting to see it more and more, which is very nice. You can also do the same, obviously, with mouse and keyboard. It's just based on your input, so I change it to mouse. I move my mouse around now. It's mouse controls, blah, blah, blah. And then lastly, in accessibility, you've got stuff like camera shake, motion blur, color deficiency, type, all that sort of stuff, which is good to see. Motion blur you cannot turn off entirely, but I haven't noticed motion blur be really like bad or anything. On minimal, it seems fine. I just default it always to the lowest, because I just prefer not to see it. Some games do have it, like, do it well sometimes, but usually I just default it off. Yeah, that's the settings menu. Pretty good stuff. Performance is good in this game, or at least for me. Specs-wise, I'm running a 4090 and a 7800X3D, so I would expect performance to be good. So it certified works on my machine sort of setup. But I would be inclined to believe that the performance is going to be good across the board, because they had a demo earlier in the year, like I was saying earlier, and the performance there was not the best, and it was consistently not the best. You know, it wasn't like a very spiky, like I look over here, suddenly 2 FPS, I look over here, suddenly 60. It was a pretty, like, solid, like, 50-ish. And it was, the demo was from the start of the game. And whenever I started playing this build, immediately I was hitting, like, 80, 90. So performance was a big improvement over the demo, and it's been pretty consistent in that. The only thing I've really seen is there is the occasional stutter when you're when the game just has to load in some stuff, like you've entered a new sort of chunk of the map, a new cell, I believe it's called, and it's had to load in some stuff. You'll just get a tiny little stutter, but nothing too crazy. Certainly nothing that's been like impacting gameplay. It's just been while I've been running around, nothing's been happening in combat or anything. Anyway, with that all said, and out of the way, let's hop into my main save. Now you can see here it says about 15 hours. I would probably cut that down to about 12 as I've had the game AFK for a bit over these past couple of days. So I'd probably leave it around there. There's that pop-in I was telling you about with some of the grass just when you first load in, but I haven't really noticed it much anywhere else. But yeah, welcome to the country of Hydia, or Hedea, depending on who you are and who you ask. It is quite a nice looking game. Definitely not like the best looking game you'll see all year, but definitely pretty damn good, especially considering this is not a full price release. I believe a $44.99, so we're seeing AA kind of pricing on this one, and I'd say that's probably firmly where the game kind of lands. But it does look good, and the aesthetic is fantastic. You've got this, really nice, like, real-world, rural village look. But then, just as you can see in the background, you've just got crazy, like, obelisks just ominously in the background, mixed in with telephone wires and all this sort of stuff. It's a great look, I have to say. And as you can see down there, the enemies are certainly quite a looker as well. So, I'll show you that. I'll show you the sort of inventory system here, and I'm going to quickly move off the investigation screen because that might show you some story spoilers. I'm going to avoid really talking about anything to do with story stuff apart from, like, I'll talk a little bit about the premise, the setup, and if I do talk about anything story-related, I will keep it vague because I'm mainly here not to spoil the story for you, but just show you a little bit about the gameplay, show you what this game has to offer, that kind of thing. But I will say, I have been enjoying the story, very much so. But this is the inventory screen. It's very Souls-like, but this game does set itself apart from Souls-likes in terms of the gameplay, certainly. But you've got 2 weapons you can equip, you've got 2 pieces of defensive gear, you've got an active relic, which you have to use, a passive relic, which is just always working, as you might imagine. And then you've got a bunch of usable items that you can attach here onto a hotbar. Like I said, very Souls-like. You know, if you've played a Souls game, you're very familiar with the look of this equipment screen. And you can go into your inventory and you can see pretty much just about everything you've ever picked up, and there's all sorts of different things in there. That's all good. Now, this is one of the parts where the game very much sets itself aside from being a Souls-like. There's going to be stuff in here that you're going to look at and go like, okay, you know, here comes another one with the Souls-like fatigue has set in sort of thing for a lot of people, and I think people might have a knee-jerk reaction to seeing the stamina-based combat system and stuff like that, but this is part of where the game kind of sets itself apart. You have a drone. This drone is with you all the time, and it has various abilities it can do. Not only does it act as like things like your flashlight, stuff like that, but you can also use it to perform various abilities, one of them being this distract, which is quite key to the game's combat loop, or at least on this difficulty anyway. I'll speak a little bit more about the difficulty in a moment, but you've got stuff like forward charge. I mean, you can activate it and the drone will attach itself to your back and you'll propel you forward and you attack through an enemy. It's pretty fun. This one, it like lifts you up into the air and you do like a big slam sort of thing. So lots of really cool things like that. And these are just cooldown based, so you just do them and then you wait the cooldown and then job's done. Exploration. This is where you sort of track like mysteries and good deeds. So good deeds is kind of what the game calls, it's kind of like it's side quests, but it's not really like you're not given side quests. You just come across people, and if you can help them in their predicament, then that is a good deed done. You know, they won't ask you specifically to say like, hey, go get this thing for me, I will reward you. It's mostly you'll come across someone in a predicament, yeah, and you'll just be like, hey, I know how I could help you because you've been paying attention, you know? That is one of this game's biggest things, is the no... one of its big selling points is no quest markers. This game does not hold your hand in any way when it comes to how to complete certain things, like the story. It doesn't tell you like where to go. It keeps track of the information that you've learned, so you can always cross-reference that with, you know, where you think you might have to go and all this sort of stuff. So information isn't lost, but you might have to, you know, you're gonna have to remember a few things and be like, okay, so this person told me about that, so I should head over there and do that, you know. And I really enjoy it. Really, really enjoy it. But we'll speak more about that in a moment. For now, let's talk a bit about the combat. And yeah, so this is looking pretty Soulsy. You can see in the top left, I've got a health and a stamina bar. You know, I dodge around, my stamina goes down, and I attack and my stamina goes down. You know, that's pretty Soulsy. Enemies coming at me. Now, one thing this game does that sets itself apart very nicely is if I get hit by this guy, there we go. You can see the damage I just took there. Now, if I were to start hitting this enemy, you'll notice it grays out and there's a white line appears around me at the bottom. Now, as I'm hitting, that is going up. And if I time it right and hit R1, I will regain, or I shouldn't say regain, because it's not like Bloodborne's rally system, where an enemy hits you and then you hit them back to get your health back. It's more so you're just hitting them and building up a heal on yourself. And then you activate it. Now it's got a fairly tight window to do the activation, and it's usually while you're swinging away. So it, I thought these guys were gonna get up, but apparently they're not. I think they're supposed to trigger when you pick up an item, but I already got the item, so unlucky fellas. But yeah, so it's. The healing system is really, really interesting. I like it quite a bit because fights with enemies can be really teetering on a knife's edge the whole time. And this is where I would kind of recommend playing on the hardest difficulty, at least up until, there's a certain point I've hit in the game where the game's difficulty has spiked quite heavily. Fights are significantly harder for me recently. So I don't know if I'd recommend it for the whole game, but I'd certainly recommend trying it. See what you think of the hardest difficulty. Because fights can, you can be going in, you're pretty confident, and maybe you take a few bad hits and your health's low, and you get a few good hits in back, and now your health's right back up there, and you're trading blows, going back and forth, you're doing a little parry here and there, It can be very rewarding. Speaking of parry, I'll see if I can show you that. So, cool little parry system. Enemies have, like, posture and all that. You can sort of break their stance, because we are all living in Sekiro's world. I kind of missed it. And you can see I missed my timing on the heal as well, so I don't get that back either. But yeah, I quite like that in terms of the combat system. It's one thing that keeps the combat feeling different. There's a different flow to it with that system in there. Compared to the usual, like, wait for enemy to swing, dodge, blah, blah, blah. You can really just start swinging in there, and as long as you're careful, you can come out on top, especially if you're using something like a... Well, let me just show you. Especially if you're using something like a greatsword. Because that thing is going to regain a lot of health. But you're probably going to get hit quite a few times while you're swinging, so... It allows you to get very aggressive, but you're playing with your health as a resource there very heavily. But let's run around here and fight some more of the enemies. The enemies are pretty interesting, conceptually. These, like, weird, white, humanoid creatures with, like, no faces and stuff, and they come in various shapes and sizes. Then there's also another aspect to them. I'll see if I can show you. Well, you may have seen it back there. There's a big blue thing, but I'll tell you more about that when we actually find one. There's a parry. So when enemies, like, glow red, that's when you can parry their move, just like that, and then you can do a little, like, sort of animation, do a little finish them off. Sometimes you get a little action camera on that. Sometimes you don't. Let's see if I can get it here again. I believe in the first demo I tried, they had it so that you could parry every attack from enemies, but I think they didn't want people just standing there doing this, essentially. So they made it so you have to look out for specific attacks, and then otherwise, they didn't want it to become a parry fest. They wanted to incentivize you using your weapon abilities, because you can upgrade your weapons in this game, as you might imagine. Now, there are two ways of upgrading your weapons. One of them is to use materials to upgrade them, but this won't necessarily upgrade the damage. I believe it does a little bit, but not majorly so. It's not the way you make your weapon do more damage heavily. The main way is to keep killing enemies. The more you kill enemies, the more experience you get for your weapon, and your sword will just get stronger, or whatever weapon you're using. What upgrading weapons does is allows them to go even higher in levels from killing enemies, and also allows you to put these glyphs in them, which allow you to do, like, all sorts of crazy effects, like, like that, like a little AoE and stuff. And it also changes the look. Like, this sword looked like a pretty typical, like, kind of short sword before, and then I infused it with, like, despair, I guess. That's kind of what this game's got going on. There's things just floating around, the concept of, agony is just out there, and we have to fight it. It's very interesting. So let's, I'll show you this. So this is, sort of like, the big idea of the combat is certain enemies will just have these things in them, and you cannot kill the white humanoid enemy while this thing is out there. You can see they're tethered. If they're tethered, it means you have to kill the, I don't know, geometry. This aspect of whatever it is. You have to kill this before you can kill them. So one pretty core thing is you can use the drone to go and distract this guy. So now it's a one-on-one until, your drone has ran out of distracting juice or whatever it uses to do that. So we can beat up this thing. It goes away, goes back inside the enemy. Now you can see that middle bar above the enemy's health, or sorry, in between the enemy's health and, like, that purple bar. Whenever that fills up, this thing will come back out, but it will always only have as much health as this thing does. So your progress, even if even if the enemy does manage to come back out, is you didn't lose your progress. It's not like you reset to step 1, essentially, which is pretty nice. Yeah, the combat's fun in this game. One thing I will say is there is decent enemy variety, but the game does sort of seem to have capped out and it's now just going, okay, here's the same enemies, but they are now tier 2. They are now stronger. And the other way that the game sort of gets harder in that regard is enemies, there'll be crazier enemy compositions. You'll fight all these enemies one-on-one, you'll get very used to how they work and what they do, and then eventually the game will throw, like, here's this combination of 2 enemies at you, and you'll be like, oh, that's going to be a tough combo. And then throw in the fact that they might have a geometry shape in there that, or an aspect in there that, you know, you have to kill first before you can then deal with them, and you can only distract one with your drone, so which one do you distract and stuff like that, you know? And that's where the real difficulty comes in. Especially now that I've just sort of got to the end of Act 1, and that's when the game starts, like, getting a lot harder. Basically, the tier 2 versions of these enemies hit so much harder than the tier 1s do. And yeah, I'm kind of going through it right now in my main playthrough. So this is like the second time I've made this, a recording of this particular video. One of them, I made it when I was significantly less further in, and I kind of got to a point when I was playing there that I was just like, okay, I feel like I kind of have to do this again, because things have changed quite a bit, and I feel like I need to discuss them. And that is one of them. Because before I was saying, like, absolutely play this game in the hardest difficulty that you can manage, or just try the hardest difficulty and see how that goes. Kind of Witcher 3 style. I think the best way to play that game, for me personally, is to play it on the hardest difficulty, because it sort of makes the combat more authentic to, you know, the role play, the idea that you are a Witcher, essentially. Whereas this game, it makes the combat just feel more important, you know, less like an afterthought that you're kind of just steamrolling enemies. Because on the easier difficulties, it is a cakewalk. But now that the difficulty has ramped up, it does have me thinking, like, damn, do I want to turn that down? do I want to reduce that a little bit? Actually, reminds me, there's another set of difficult settings in here that you can only do once you're actually in, and you can actually adjust stuff here. So I could turn enemy health and base damage up even higher. I couldn't imagine this on, like, the highest level, like 100 or 200%. Like, that is absolutely crazy. So did that keep? Okay, keep that there. But yeah, absolutely insane numbers. Let's see, let's fight this little guy. He's gonna pop out another one of these crazy geometries, well, aspects. I haven't really been described fully what these are. Story-wise, like I said, this game it's a bit of a mystery. You're gonna be figuring stuff out. Are you not? You're supposed to spit out the big guy. No? You don't want to do that? Alright, fair enough. You know, we'll let bygones be bygones. That is the first time I've ever seen that happen. Of course, it happens as I record a video. I haven't actually seen, like, a single bug the whole time I've been playing, for that, like, 12 hours or so, except for right this moment, and it happens to be on that guy right there. It seems to think that he's popped out the weird shape out of him, so I can't actually do damage. Yeah, unsure about that one. Maybe if I kept hitting it enough. Well, that's actually, you know, free way to heal, you know. There we go. It's just a completely intentional healing source here. Very unconventional. Yeah, not too sure what's going on there. Very unfortunate, but thankfully not like a critical enemy I have to kill or anything. But yeah, to speak a little bit on the story, or sort of like on the premise, I've been having a really good time with it. It's very mysterious, you're chucked into the deep end, there's lots of crazy stuff going on, you're trying to figure out your own stuff while trying to, you know, being shown all this other stuff. Really reminded me of playing Alan Wake, playing any of, like, the sort of Remedy games, where everything you're seeing is just totally, like, outlandish and wild and weird, and as you figure it out more and more, you're like, oh my god, that makes sense in that way, you know, in this crazy way, and this completely recontextualizes this thing I saw earlier because I just didn't understand at the time, and that's kind of what going through this game is like, and you tie that all in with the fact that they're doing the whole no quest marker thing, and, you know, side quests aren't really, like, told to you that they are a side quest. Like, you just meet someone and they say something, and you're like, oh, you just have to think to yourself, like, oh, maybe I could help you. I'll keep an eye out for maybe a way to help you. And that's sort of... all of that does a great job of making you feel, like, really connected with the world you're exploring. And it's one of my favorite things about this game, absolutely. Okay, here we'll have a normal one. Yep. Okay, you're definitely around and alive. Yeah, level 1 enemies, so I'm kind of tearing my way through them because my weapons are upgraded for the level 2 enemies now, so level 1s are kind of nothing. But yeah, the areas you can explore as well, they're quite large. Kind of remind me of Metro Exodus's areas, except you don't have a map. So there's nothing to open up and say, okay, you know, I've explored that, I'll go over there. You have to really keep the mental map. For me, I've always really enjoyed keeping a mental map. It's one of my favorite things about playing any Souls game. Is as I'm going through the game, is just keeping it all in mind, like where I've been, where I haven't been. Oh, there was a path over there. Oh, there was a locked door over there. I wonder if I'll get over to that. You know, if I go this way, maybe, you know, which way's the right way to go, so I can avoid it and go all the other ways and do all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's fun exploring these maps because you just don't know what you're gonna find because you just have no way of knowing beforehand, you know, unless someone has alluded to something or told you about it, you know. It's not like I can open up a map and say, oh, there's a tomb on the map here, or like a building on the map I can clearly see. Yeah, it does. It's a great world they've crafted here. It's a fictional country, Hedea, however you pronounce it. And it's kind of like I forget what the term is, but essentially it's cut off from the rest of the world. No one is really allowed out or in of the country. It's equally hard to get in as it is to get out. Our character was kind of... And this is like story premise stuff, like from the very beginning. This isn't like, you know, spoilers or stuff that's been revealed later. But our character was born here, and he was smuggled out as a child, and essentially he has sort of snuck his way back in using a current civil war that's going on to kind of hide his re-entry. Because he wants to find out, you know, more about his parents, because they weren't able to get out with him. So he's here to find his parents and just find out more answers about this weird-ass country, you know? And yeah, I'm right there with him. I want to know more about this weird-ass country. The more I find out, the more intrigued I am, because it's very much set in a very realistic setting, but then you have all this crazy stuff going on with it that just adds that extra layer of intrigue and stuff. Like there's a civil war going on between two religious groups, the Palamists and the Sabinians, and they are very much like a Protestant and Catholic thing. And for me being from Northern Ireland, I mean, I understand that all too well. So that's a backdrop for this world that's very interesting. This crazy enemy here turns into a big spiky orb and drops on you. You can parry them as well. Get some health back from you. Yeah. So this kind of like a little village. This is kind of a little area that has quite a few people to talk to. I'll try to find someone here to show you the sort of conversational system, because it's kind of a two-tiered system. Depending on who you talk to, you'll be able to just sort of get, you know, NPC dialogue about just what they're currently doing. So you can be like, hey, and he'll talk about his current situation and what his thoughts are, and that's basically it. And you can just talk to someone like that, and they might mention something, and then that might be like something you're able to help with, you know. I've had characters that I have failed their mission because they've just told me about their situation, and I just didn't realize I could help with it. And that may sound like a criticism, because it's like, oh, the game should have told me that this was something I could have done, but I genuinely enjoy the fact that the game just went, you didn't piece two and two together, and you suffer the consequences of that. It makes the game feel so much more real, and it makes my playthrough of this story feel more like mine, because that was me. I didn't figure that out. It wasn't, you know, some arbitrary thing. Now where is someone I could have a good talk to around here? There's normally a guy here, but the story has progressed. He's no longer there. So this game does have once again, a very you know, Dark Souls-like system, where once you hit certain milestones in the story, the rest of the world kind of moves. You know, everyone sort of gets on with their business. And again, that's just another layer to one thing I really like about the Souls games, and one thing I really like about this game is that it does not feel like the world is waiting for you. You know, if you're not doing those missions and you hit a main story quest, then they're all going to move on. You know, they're not going to wait for you. I know there's someone up here I can talk to. Someone who's sort of hiding out from all the war. But this sort of, just to show you the other sort of conversational system, is on the left you can generally ask them about sort of investigation related things. You can ask them about them specifically, or you can ask them about like, hey, what happened here? And on the right is this really cool thing where you can ask about general knowledge. Now this is like Hedea, like just what do you think about the country we live in? What do you think about the Civil War? What do you think about, you know, the two religious groups and stuff like that? And it's a really cool way to deliver exposition in a way that feels very real, because one, I had to seek it out. I hit the button to learn about it. And two, you're getting it through the eyes of potentially very biased people. And piecing that together with what other people say is just, again, just one of the things that grounds this world really, really nicely. I will say this game gets very dark. I was not expecting it to get as dark as it did sometimes, especially in this little village, I will say. I'd almost go as far to say, you know, kind of like a trigger warning for some people. You know, just long story short, war crimes, essentially. But it's handled in a mature way. It's certainly handled in a mature way. This definitely doesn't feel like, you know, writing for the, you know, I don't know. I don't even know what the teenager audience that, you know, some writing used to be like, you know, back in the day. Sort of like in the 2010s, you know, you'd have sort of action games that would depict like some military horror thing, but it's, you know, it's not really interested in delivering that in a mature way. It's just delivering it in a way that they feel like they have to for their type of game, if that makes sense. It's a hard one to describe, you know, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down when I talk about how this game just sort of delivers that in a more mature sense, pretty much. You've also got this is your transport vehicle. This is how you sort of get around the place. There's different areas, so like I said, it's like kind of like Metro Exodus, so there's different places that you can travel to. I believe every time there's some kind of story progression, enemies will respawn. There might be some slight differences to the enemies as well, depending on where you are in the story and what's going on. But sometimes I come back here and enemies are repopulated, and sometimes they're not, so I'm not quite sure what the full ramifications of that is. One other thing that I found really, really cool is this game has quite a few nice quality of life things in it, because, no, like, you will be running around a lot, but the game does a few things that are quite nice. So, whenever I first got here, there was no blacksmith. Had to, you know, uncover that, get that all up and running. Whenever I got the blacksmith up and running, I realized that the APC wasn't there, because you actually enter this area for the first time, like, way over in that direction. So I was thinking, like, oh, Jesus, every time I, like, travel back here, am I going to have to run to that blacksmith, like, to upgrade my weapons? Like, that's going to be a real pain in the ass. But ever since I moved on to the area after this one, whenever I came back, the APC actually just parks next to the blacksmith. And it's done that in the next area as well. There's someone that you may need to go back to, you know, a couple of times during your playthrough. And the APC is now parked, like, really close to them. And I thought that was, like, a really, really cool quality of life feature. I really enjoyed that. You know, because I thought that was going to be, like, one of my big criticisms. I was going to be like, oh, you know, the game, you know, as much as it's trying to respect the fact that, you know, no quest markers and it's going to treat you like an adult and you're going to figure stuff out. Like, is it maybe gone a bit too far into that realm and taken out some necessary quality of life stuff? But no, it knows what it's doing. It's a telltale sign of smart game development, you know. And I love a good telltale sign of smart game development. Now, sometimes you will have to just track it over to the other side of the map, you know, if there's a... Because one of the other aspects of this game is the puzzle solving, and sometimes these puzzles can range from something as simple as, here, you know, go find these 4 symbols for these 4 things that rotate, and then just match them all up, blah, blah, blah. or they can be genuinely, like, quite clever, you know, where you really have to be paying attention contextually to, like, things in the environment, perhaps, and, you know, pick up clues in something you've read and put two and two together, and they're not, at least in terms of the main story, they're not hard enough that I feel like, you know, you're just going to be truly stuck forever, especially if you're paying attention. However, I do believe that there are side puzzles that can get quite, you know, quite out there in terms of how you're supposed to figure them out. So I like that they've got a little bit for everyone in terms of the puzzle solving. And once again, you know, it's no hand holding. So whenever you do figure out those puzzles, it feels really good. You know, you figure out a puzzle in something like a, I don't know, like a Far Cry or just any Ubisoft game, really. And half the time, you know, those things are just signposted or just have a big quest marker on them, and it's like, hey, you figured it out, well done. But, you know, really, you just followed the dotted line or something. This game just goes, hey, listen, we're not even going to tell you this is a puzzle sometimes. So if you figure that out, that was all you. You know, and it feels really good to figure those out. It feels really, really good. I'd say that's the biggest takeaway from this game, is it feels incredibly rewarding in the sense of the combat, in the sense of the exploration, in the sense of the puzzles, in the sense of the story, because you can start piecing things together yourself and start making, like, you know, little predictions, like, oh, you know, based on, you know, what I've seen here and what got contextualized and over there, like, oh, I wonder if that's where this is going, and then, you know, like, maybe it'll go there, maybe it won't, but that's the kind of story we're dealing with, and it's, I like it a lot. I really do like it a lot. But yeah, I think that's all I really had to say on this one. I'm just trying to rack my brain here, and there's nothing else I really want to bring up, I think. I've shown you the inventory, I've talked about the combat, the story, the exploration. Yeah, it's all good stuff. I suppose like the main character himself, you play as a fella called Remy. He's not too much to talk about. He's a bit of a blank slate, but the game does kind of actually call attention to that and kind of gives a reason for it, which is pretty interesting. I wasn't expecting. But we'll see how that goes. You know, that could develop more. Other characters that have been in the story as well, just like, yeah, they're all right. They're fairly interesting. It's mostly the things going on with them in the story that is the really interesting part, but not terrible anyway. Certainly not terrible. And he's looking very Star Wars Outlaws, Last Jedi and stuff like that, with his sci-fi poncho, or, you know, battle poncho or whatever. Yeah, that's really all I had to say about this one. Now you can pick up the game for £44.99 or $49.99, or your regional equivalent. And yeah, personally, so far, I've been having an absolute blast with this one. Really enjoying the story, excited to see where it goes. The combat has gotten tough, you know, maybe a little bit too tough. Maybe that spike was a bit too crazy, but I mean, you've always got the option to take that sort of thing. So if I did have to point out anything that just really sort of has me a bit like, you know, it's probably the fact that the enemy variety has just sort of gone, okay, the same guys but harder now, you know. Which we'll have to see how that goes. Maybe that'll change up, because I mean, I only just finished Act 1. I don't know how many acts are in this game. I didn't want to look any of that up. So, you know, something could totally change from beyond there, but as of right now, it's just, you know, I've fought this guy a lot. I've fought the regular guys a lot. The things that, the geometry shapes that come out, I've fought them quite a lot already. Not that it isn't still fun to do, it's just, you know, getting a little bit samey. The combat's still fun. Actual swinging of the sword, doing the abilities, and then sometimes you just get two-tapped, because, well, you know, at this point in the game I'm at, suddenly you just get two-tapped by some, like, crazy move you've never seen before. But the save system is pretty, forgiving. It's kind of like, once again, like a Souls thing. There's, like, not bonfires that you save at, and whenever you kill enemies, they stay dead. It's actually a setting that was in the menu as well. You can turn on the fact that when you die, enemies will respawn, and you'll lose all your XP that you would have had until you would have sort of got to the next save point. So you can turn that on if you wish, but it's not the default, so I've been playing it with the default settings, and I'm having a good time. Yeah. I said I said there wasn't anything more to talk about, and then I found some more things to talk about, but that's just how it goes. Yeah, Hell is Us. I've been having a good time with this one. I'm gonna keep playing this one for sure in my own time. It seems like quite a long game too, which for the price and the quality of the game that we're getting here, I mean, yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you guys next time. Goodbye.